how that impacts the meaning that it gives off to the viewer. So scale, to define it, is the actual or relative dimensions of an object or parts of an object in relationship to each other. What does that mean? So it's not just size and scale, like it's 3 inches tall. It's more than that. It's how those dimensions relate to each other. So something might be out of proportion in a specific way in a sculpture, or it might look like the inside and outside are mixed up somehow. So it's a little bit more complex than just saying it's a certain size. It's more ambiguous, and it allows the artist to kind of create their own viewpoints as they are working on it. Let me tell you a bit more about what I mean by that. So I'm going to use Alberto Giacometti's sculpture to explain what I might mean about playing with scale. So this is his work of art called The Forest. It was done in about 1950. He was doing these crazy elongated human figures that he called the forest. So each of these people are stretched out. The scale of that is really unrealistic. So that's the first thing that he's using scale with. But then he's using scale to kind of fake you out in terms of your perspective. Look at how those little figures are in the back. And so that kind of gives you the impression that they're further away. Because if you look at something just on a regular landscape, things that are far away are smaller, and things that are bigger seem closer. So they're already changing that scale to alter your perception of how far or close these figures are. But then you start noticing that head in the background, and that is farthest back, but it's biggest. So that kind of changes the perspective again, and it doesn't really make sense 100%. Rumor has it that Giacometti was working on a bunch of sculptures at the same time. He had to clear a table space, and then he moved one of his pieces of artwork off of a table and onto the floor, and then he realized, hey, I can play with this size and scale. So as he's looking at the title of this, called The Forest, you can kind of picture this guy walking along the forest and looking up at these tall, skinny humans that kind of resemble trees. So again, he creates this improbability of size and scale, and it starts to take on new meanings as you kind of figure out the puzzle that artwork often is. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of a weird thing, but I think he does that really well. We're going to see more of these things again. Pablo Picasso. He is known for doing artwork from the time he was a little young kid until I think he died at 94 or 98 years old, something like that. It's said that Picasso has done more pieces than there are galleries in the world. So he could have at least one piece in every art gallery in the entire world, and that probably wouldn't contain all of his artworks, because that's how prolific he was. So he is known for Cubism, where he changed perspective and looked at things from different angles. And so his sculpture on the bottom is based on this woman who's shown in the passport photograph of the woman above. So again, this clearly doesn't look like the model, right? Her nose is not even close to that big. And he changes a lot of things. The neck is huge. There's a power to this look. Rumor has it Picasso was looking at African masks when he was inventing Cubism and thinking about breaking down things to their simplest forms and looking at those different perspectives. So again, he didn't worry about a likeness necessarily, but he created a form that was correct to him. So it was this aesthetic, artistic viewpoint of this feels right. So how things appear and how they are not always the same. So the scale was altered by enlarging the neck, enlarging the nose, deepening those the depths of there so that would stand out, really poking out the lips. So those created a whole different aesthetic with size and scale that was unexpected. So Liliana Porter did this image of the weaver. And so again, as we look at this huge pile of fabric, and then it suddenly starts to deconstruct into this thread that leads into this woman, the sculpture of this teeny tiny woman who has sewing needles or knitting needles in her hands. So again, it implies that she's made this whole thing and that she's done more work than her size and scale could ever compare. So again, creating these moments of wonder and creating these philosophical questions as well. Like, why is this woman forced to be such a workhorse to make these things? Is this the kind of legacy that she's leaving? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? So again, it pushes the viewer to ask questions and try to figure out, is there some, what is the meaning behind this? And there's multiple possibilities. There's always more than one meaning in any work of art. So Maurizio Cattelan is a sculptor he's pretty amazing. If you look at this person, he's a real person. That's not a sculpture. These are little elevators that he built into a wall at an art gallery. So you're walking into this gallery, and actually this the exhibit that I saw this in was called Matters of Size. So every artist who was in there was playing with size and scale in a way that would kind of shock you. So if you press this little button, the little elevator would open and it would ding and it would look like it was moving to a different floor. The elevator door would close. I'll import a video link of this in your Schoology so you can check it out and see how this actually works. But it's kind of like this interesting plaything. And again, it throws off the viewer. If you're walking by this in an art gallery, you may not even notice it, but then all of a sudden if someone touches it and then you see the elevator opening, you're wondering what's going on. Does it really go up and down floors, or is it just an image? So it's one of those things where it changes your perspective. Tom Friedman, this is his self-portrait. So again, scale. This self-portrait is made out of an aspirin tablet. So think about how small that is. Think about how little that is, and as you're carving your own likeness into that little tiny aspirin and not losing it, not dropping it, and how do you even notice it on a gallery wall? That's absolutely kind of crazy insane. Think about the symbolism of the media. The media is, again, the material that you're sculpting out of. This is made out of an aspirin. So I think about aspirin. You take it when you have a headache. What does that say about how you perceive yourself? Is this big, everything is a headache, life is a headache, everything's difficult, everything's hard, and this little tiny, frail human being who's so small and helpless is just looking for a means of escape. You can take this so many different ways, but again, really intriguing the way that he plays with size and scale. Claes Oldenburg, another famous sculptor. He's got this clothespin that is literally about 45 feet high, about 12 feet wide, really huge, huge, huge piece of sculpture. So he shifts that, it looks like a clothespin, true, but he shifts those proportions so there's a little bit more to it than that. He doesn't just keep it the same old way. He stretches this out so there's this exaggeration of the vertical format so it fits in Philadelphia in the cityscape where it's sitting, in the environment where it is. There is a kind of sculpture that's called site-specific sculpture, where they design it for the location that it is, and so they try to make that fit in with that environment. So he was thinking about that. He was also adjusting the form a little bit. This doesn't look exactly like a normal clothespin. If you look at the top of it, it actually kind of looks like there are, instead of just the normal shape, it almost looks like there's two heads that are facing each other, face to face. If you look at the metal spring in the middle that holds this together, that's kind of an exaggerated size and scale, and it kind of moves to where it looks like it would be arms, so that these are embracing each other. So again, by changing that size, scale, the contrast of the colors, not just having like the wood, the light wood that you would expect it to be, makes it seem more urban and modern to fit into the environment. All those things are interesting scale conclusions that shift what it originally would have been. All right, so this is where it all comes together. Your challenge for this week is to create a sculpture where you take one or more three-dimensional objects. Remember, they have to be three-dimensional, not just a skinny little book that's flat. Three-dimensional, mass, volume, form, something like a shoe, okay? So something that is wider, taller, all those things. So you're going to take one or more three-dimensional objects, and you're going to use the concept of scale to disarm, surprise, or make the viewer laugh. Heck, you can even make me cry if you want to, because it doesn't always have to be positive. You can do whatever you wish on there. So you're going to create a sculpture that uses scale to disarm the viewer in one way or another. So those objects that you choose can be found, they can be made, or they can be altered. So let's go through that. If you're finding objects, maybe I'm taking something in my basement, a barbell, or some weights, and then I'm taking a toy in my house and I have a little teeny tiny toy that's totally a different scale than the barbell. That obviously the barbell would crush this thing, but maybe it looks like this little, action figure is holding up the barbell. That might be one way that you could do the solution. Maybe you're going to take something like a broom and alter it into a completely different format, and change that so that it looks like it's in some sort of action or movement that it wouldn't normally be in. So thinking about how you can take found objects, or you can make objects. Maybe you're going to alter that broom so it becomes personified, so it has eyes, mouth, and that kind of thing, and it's actually doing something different. Maybe you're making the objects. Maybe you do have some different art supplies. Maybe you're going to use your tin foil and make it look like it's a human. Maybe I don't know, a dragon or whatever that is, and the size and scale is going to be changing that, the meaning of those objects. So think about meaning and symbolism behind objects and how that fits too. And then again, every week we have stuff on the discussion board. Don't forget to fill those out too. We're going to have some specific questions based on your process. So you're going to be kind of self-examining your own work and sharing out whatever meanings or purposes are behind that. So that's your challenge. And as I am about to send you off to attack this challenge, I want to thank you guys for all the work that you've been doing. I know this week it was really encouraging because some folks who've kind of fallen off the beaten track returned to the art room this week and did some awesome stuff. So I was really excited to see that. It's never too late to come back. It's never really, and for those of you who've been here every week and being consistent and hitting every single deadline, I thank you for that. I know life is different in this world, and I want to honor the different processes that you all have, whether it's internet or sharing a computer with siblings or whatever that might be, because I've heard lots of stories lately. And I just want to know I am with you and for you in this process, and talk to me if you have things that are getting in the way. And so that's the deal. I'm excited to see what you're going to make. Play with scale. Start looking at the different things around you and how you can alter that perspective. And again, you're starting to think like an artist. So think about how you might challenge your viewer. So it's basically, forcing them to think in a different way than they ever had or would before. Okay, thanks guys. Have a great week. See you soon.